The question is slavery wrong?
Yes. Dubsy, put in some applause for me for being so based and not slavery code. I did not think that that would be the question. There are many questions that plague the human mind, like why do we exist? What is our purpose here? They're just some questions that we can't answer right now, like what consciousness is, why we're here, etc. Religious people, especially like Christian fundamentalists, like to try to use this as a gotcha to atheists. And so there's this video that I came across today called "A Question Atheists Can't Answer." And it might be true that we cannot answer this question. That might be true. That doesn't make us wrong, of course. That just means that we can't answer this specific question. But, you know, Christians or anybody else who tries to answer questions such as that are just guessing. Ultimately, they are just guessing. Even if you fervently believe in what you're saying, you are just guessing at the end of the day. And that's just how it is. So we're going to take a look at what this question is, whether or not I can answer it, and go from there. So let's just take a look. This is from a guy named Brian Holdsworth, by the way. Struggling Catholic thinker, apologist, writer, speaker, and communication professional. So yeah. And he's known for such recent content as "Are Gay Priests a Thing?" Should be fun. Should be a fun time. Let's take a look.
Okay.
Oh,
obviously.
What is the strip? I'm sorry. This is abysmal. There's something very unsettling. Like it looks like the character creator just kind of randomized something. It's not good. There's something very off-putting about this look. Nothing he can't fix, by the way. This is all things that are very fixable. Like, he looks like he could be a very presentable gentleman. And he has better hair than I do, for sure, considering I don't have any. But yeah, so he's got like the squilliam hair, kind of. You know, like I don't know, something about the swirls on it kind of reminds me of, it's giving squilliam fancy son, is what it is. Just interesting. Restaurant waiter type beats. Even like, I don't know. Like, it just doesn't look like, something's off. That's all I'm saying. Something is off. I can't put my finger on it.
Atheists come in all shapes and sizes, and inevitably, whenever I offer any kind of argument about atheism or against atheism, people will say, not all atheists believe that. Not all atheists believe the same thing.
Okay.
That's a straw man argument. And that's true, not all atheists believe the same thing. But a 10-minute YouTube video doesn't allow me to address every variation of atheism that exists. Nor is it my goal to refute every instance of that common creed. Instead, I'm simply trying to address people who subscribe to a popular form of atheism, especially a kind that I interact with a lot on YouTube and that I see on certain channels, and to invite them to reconsider the logical coherence of their position.
Okay.
And if what I describe doesn't align with your particular form of atheism, then you can be confident that I'm not addressing you, and then therefore, there's no need to be defensive. So the particular kind of atheism that I'm addressing in this video is the kind that says that only what can be materially observed and empirically measured is real, and that if you want to assert...
I don't think that's true, because we recognize that consciousness is real, and there are ways to measure it, but I feel like that's a very sweeping way of describing the concept of needing evidence to discern whether or not something exists. Like, we can say that consciousness exists evidently because we all experience it individually. Like, we know that we are conscious beings individually. Or at least, at the very least, I know that I am. I don't know if any of you are. That's the whole I think, therefore I am rabbit hole that we're not going to go down. But, you know, just because you can't, like, observe or measure something does not mean that it's not real. Like, I think germ theory was, I'm fairly certain that germ theory was invented before, not invented, was, what's the word? Theorized before we could even see microbes. Okay. So even before they had the ability to measure it, they were already hypothesizing about, well, maybe there's microbes that are causing diseases, right? Postulated, thank you. Same thing with atoms, right? Before we could ever dream of being able to see or measure atoms, we were already theorizing about it. So just because we can't measure something doesn't mean it's not real. So I reject that premise.
Anything as true, that is the kind of evidence that you need to provide. And it's on those kinds of grounds that they accuse religious believers of being superstitious for not being able to provide empirical evidence for our religious claims. So
well, the burden of proof is on you. Like if you want to state that God exists, you have to be able to, you have to have some kind of evidence to back that up. And all the evidence that people have to back up the existence of God or a God is not substantial. It's simply not substantial, because just like the best that they usually have is questions that people are just not able to answer. Like I said at the beginning, like why we're here, or what consciousness is, or where it comes from, or where we all came from, you know, where matter and energy itself came from, the universe. But just because we can't answer that doesn't mean you get to stick God in. That's called God of the gaps fallacy. You can't do that.
It's this kind of atheist that I address this question to, because I just don't think that they can answer it. I've done a lot of searching myself to see, are there atheists out there? Are there commentators?
That's pretty
are there
true,
even
Kitty.
scholars who
It does say in the
this?
Bible that God exists.
And I don't seem to be able to find one that is satisfying. The question is slavery wrong?
Yes. Dubsy, put in some applause for me for being so based and not slavery pilled. I did not think that that would be the question. Interesting. Okay. I mean, yeah, slavery's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because people should be free to do what they want. I believe that human freedom is important because we're all just kind of here whittling away our lives day by day, and we should be enjoying it to the best of our ability without impeding other people's ability to enjoy it. As long as you're not doing that, you can do whatever you want. And slavery takes away from people's ability to do that, and I don't like that. So that's why slavery's wrong.
The reason I ask that question is because virtually
and I personally
all
would want to be
respectable
enslaved.
people will frantically trip over themselves to be the first to affirm that, yeah, it's wrong. Slavery is definitely wrong. And I even hear...
I came in thinking that it was going to be some kind of philosophical question, honestly. This strikes me as very bad faith.
Many atheists accuse the Bible of being morally inferior for not going far enough in its condemnations of slavery. But I don't think that the atheist of the variety that I described earlier can answer this question sufficiently.
I just did.
By that, I don't mean that they don't have answers, just that their answers are illogical and that they expose an inconsistency in the kinds of evidence that they demand of others to account for their beliefs. Because if you're going to logically account for the truth of a statement like slavery is wrong, you have to be able to define the terms of that statement. Slavery is easy enough to define, so I'm not going to spend any time on that.
Okay.
But the word wrong is one that I've never heard defined in a way that is consistent with atheism.
You ought to not do it, I guess. Like, it's slavery is wrong. This is basically just a semantics game he's trying to play with us. Like, we all know what the word wrong means. We use words to communicate ideas, and when we say the word wrong, what we mean is that you shouldn't do it because of one reason or another. Like, it's wrong to do heroin, you know? It's wrong to do heroin, not for the same reason that it's wrong to infringe on other people's freedoms. It's wrong to do heroin because it will f your body up, okay? I maintain that. But when I say it's wrong to do heroin, I don't say that for the same reason that I say it's wrong to kill somebody. Because doing heroin, I believe it's your right to do it. I believe that you have the right to shoot yourself up with heroin if you want to do that. But I don't believe that you have the right to kill somebody. So I'm using the word wrong, quote unquote, in very different ways there. And this is just going to end up being a semantics game, which, you know, people default to when they're cowards and they have no actual way of backing up anything they're saying.
Because if you're going
Which I'm not accusing him of yet,
logically,
but we'll get there.
You cannot include the thing that you're trying to define in your definition. That would be circular reasoning and therefore fallacious. For example, if I asked you, what is a honeybee? And you said, well, it's a bee-like creature that makes honey. I would be fully within my rights to accuse you of failing to answer my question.
Okay, what is a honeybee? It's an insect with whatever characteristics. What's an insect? It's a creature that has, that's usually very small with the outer shell, whatever it's called, exoskeleton, with 6 legs and 3 body parts, the head, thorax, and abdomen. Okay, what's a thorax? It's like, you can just go on and on and on, and eventually it does become circular. Like, all definitions eventually become circular at some point. Like, what's a thorax? It's the middle part of the body. What's the middle part of the body? It's your thorax, you know? Like, you could stop there. You could say, okay, well, what's the middle part of your body? Well, that's the part of the body that's composed. Yeah, like, you can go on and on and on. Like I said, this is just a semantics game.
All you said is that a bee is a bee. And that's obvious enough. But what's also true is that we can't use undefined synonyms in our definitions of a thing either. So if
we do that all the time. That's what definitions are. They're synonyms. When we give a definition, we're just doing 2 equals 2. okay? 2 equals 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2, okay? And that's what a definition is. You're taking the number 2, and you can describe 2 in a myriad of ways. You can describe it as 1 plus 1. You can describe it as 2 minus 0. You can describe it as 0.5 plus 1.5. You can describe it as 2 times 1. There are a number of ways to describe the number 2, okay? You can spell it, 2WO. But the point is, we are all communicating the same idea at the end of the day, okay? When we define a word, we're just doing that process, but with words. It literally is just a 2 equals 2 kind of game. 2-wo? I don't know what? Did I say 2WO? Oh, sorry. TW. Sorry. You guys know what I meant. Hopefully that makes sense.
If you ask me, what is a cat?
Like, that's literally what a definition is.
Well, a cat is a feline creature that humans have a disordered amount of affection for. Well, feline is just a synonym for cat. So all I've said, again, is a cat is a cat, which does nothing to define what it is. It just keeps us going in circles. And
okay, you take out the word feline, you just say creature. That's too vague. You have to describe it somehow. I don't know. I'm just going to end up repeating what I just said. Like I said, it eventually becomes circular at some point. But you're still communicating the idea of a cat.
Unfortunately, every time I've heard an atheist give an account for morality, which then allows them to use words like right and wrong logically and coherently, this is the exact thing that they do. Like, one article I read said that morality is simply whatever prevents suffering and increases well-being. But all they've done, according to this definition, is made suffering synonymous with evil and well-being synonymous with goodness, never really defining any of them. And further,
he just did define it. What? They literally, whoever that person was, defined. Hold on. Let me listen to that one more time.
Ever prevents suffering and increases well-being. But all they've done, according to this definition, is made suffering synonymous with evil and well-being synonymous with goodness, never really defining. And
by the way, that's really not what morality is. Like, everybody kind of has, like, that's what morality is to me. That's my version of morality. But like, I feel like that's a little bit of that would be what morality is to me. People have different versions of morality, and your morality can be different from mine, etc. But ultimately, I think that's a pretty good definition overall of what I describe as being morally good, you know? I don't understand what he's saying here. I thought that was a pretty decent definition.
Any of them. And furthermore, they're not even accurate synonyms. Suffering isn't simply wrong or evil. In fact, I can think of all kinds of instances in which varying degrees of suffering can produce something that is widely considered good.
Yeah, but if you can reduce that suffering and have the same outcome, you should do that. That would be like, here, what's the example you give?
Like chemotherapy or surgery.
Okay, chemotherapy and surgery, yes. You will suffer through chemotherapy and surgery. But let me ask you this. Let's say that we have, here's a great example. So there's a type of, like, I forget if it's cancer or like an infection or something in the kneecap, right? And when this happens, you have to have your kneecap removed. Like, your knee just needs to come off. Now, what we used to do for that is we used to just amputate the leg, like chop it off, right? And that's fine and good, you know, for what it is. It keeps you from dying from an infection or from cancer, whatever the disease was. Point is, now what they do, I can't remember what the procedure is called, but they'll take out the middle portion of the leg. Yeah, rotation plasty. Thank you, Queen Laura. Yep. They'll take out the middle portion of the leg, including the knee, and they will rotate your foot, okay? They'll keep the foot attached with its nerves and ligaments and whatever. Not ligaments, I forget. The main thing is nerves and muscle tissue, right? They'll take that, they'll twist it around, they'll put it where the knee was, and it still works. Like, you can still move your foot up and down like that. And you have a foot knee. Yeah, you have a foot knee. So now your toes are backwards on your body, your heel acts like your knee, and people have really benefited from that. So you have two different types of surgery. One involves more suffering than the other because you've now lost like your entire leg, including your knee. But the other type of surgery gives you a functional knee. And in that manner, we've reduced suffering, which is good. That's a good thing. So even in this definition, like, this doesn't work. You still want to reduce suffering as much as possible. Chemo causes less harm to people's well-being than its absence. That is also true. Yeah, that's a much simpler way of putting it. Thank you, Lady Nova.
Surgery. Exercise is almost universally recognized as a good thing in the right place and at the right time.
Well, not everybody considers it suffering, even though I do. But if you could listen, if you could achieve the same results from exercise without exercising and just like sitting on your ass and doing nothing, why the would you not do that? Why would you not do that? Like, you've now reduced the amount of suffering for the same results and the same health outcomes, but you don't have to suffer. Why would you not do that? Unless you enjoy the process of working out, which some people do. But if you could remove that component, if you consider that component suffering and you could remove it, then you should. This still doesn't work.
But the first time I went running as a way to
POV,
get back
you fall
in
asleep
shape,
and a boy sleep
the
over.
experience was so unpleasant for me that I nearly threw up. Self-sacrifice and self-denial seem to me to be traits that most people recognize as being honorable, but almost always introduce a degree of suffering. We have monuments in virtually every city where I live commemorating those who died in the wars of the 20th century. So was it wrong for them to suffer and die for those causes? So it seems that not only is morality...
No, because they suffered and died to reduce overall suffering in the world. They didn't do it for nothing. Like, if you ask them what they died for, they did it to reduce the overall suffering of the world. None of this makes any sense. This is like, even, like, I feel like I'm stupid today, like more stupid than usual, and even I can dissect this.
Morality and right and wrong, not defined by that definition, the synonyms that they attempt to smuggle in as substitutes for the terms that they are trying to define in a circular way.
Dude, it's not smuggling in synonyms. It's called defining something, okay? There's no objective definition of any word, okay? When I say cat, usually what you think of is a small creature with pointed ears, a little tail, right, that wiggles back and forth sometimes, that has claws, 4 legs, right, walks on all fours, has a little pouch on its belly for some reason. You own one, you get it fixed. You get it toys, you play with it, whatever. And you can describe its behavior too. Cats are goofy little creatures, the little wiggly guys, right? And in that way, I kind of paint a picture for you. But but like a tiger's a cat too. That's a cat. So when I say I own a cat, do you think that I mean a tiger? Of course not, because you're not an idiot. Well, you are, but you know, like you're in this, I would hope you at least not think that, right? So when I'm saying cat, if I'm talking about in the context of a zoo, I might be meaning a tiger or a lion. If I'm talking about in the context of a pet, I'm probably talking about a house cat, okay? So definitions just help us relay ideas. So when somebody says, what do you mean by cat? I can describe that in a way that equals what I'm talking about. That's not smuggling in a synonym. That's called defining a word.
Aren't even good synonyms. Many others have tried to argue that morality is simply what has been agreed upon as a social contract, which can accumulate into something like a legal system or the law. But this begs for a definition of the social contract or the law. If you reply that the social contract is an agreement about what is right and wrong, then all you've done is made the social contract or the law synonymous with morality. And again, you're back to arguing in circles.
That's what a definition is.
What is morality? And you say that it's the social contract about what is right and wrong or the law. And I follow up by asking, okay, can you define what the law is? And you say it's a
list of instructions for what to do and not to do that society broadly follows. That's what it is.
Series of documented statements about what is right and wrong. Do you not see how?
No, not necessarily what's right and wrong, because slavery was part of the law. You know, like that was legally enforced by the law. It wasn't even just legal to own slaves. It was like, if your slave escapes, you have to go get it. Like somebody has to go get it and bring it back. Like that's what the law was. So not only was slavery allowed, it was like legally enforced. It still is legally enforced. When you go to jail, like you become a slave to the state. Like that's what happens. So legally, slavery is okay. But morally, I find slavery abhorrent, okay? So it's not about what's right and wrong, it's about what's legally allowable.
We're just going in circles without ever defining any of the things that we're talking about. Furthermore, it fails to
It is defining. Then you give a definition, man. Then you define it. Let's hear your perfect objective definitions. The man here who is apparently the objective dictionary, I guess.
How we can judge one instance of a social contract or a legal system against another. How can we say that the legal system that allows slavery are bad and the legal systems that prevent it are good unless morality somehow sits outside and above legal systems and social contracts?
Unless morality somehow sits outside and above. What? That doesn't make any... What? Is anybody... Okay, am I being stupid? I don't understand what he's saying. He's trying to say that like morality... So he said morality somehow sits above and outside legal systems. He's arguing for absolute morality. Oh, okay, I got it.
And social contracts. Because that's the question that's being asked here. Yeah. Is slavery wrong? Are systems that allow slavery wrong? I'm not asking, do some people create legal systems that outlaw it? Obviously, that's a question that doesn't need to be asked. The question is, ought it to be against the law for the sake of what is morally good? So again, not only is the social contract theory fallacious for using circular reasoning, it doesn't even use a well thought out substitute for morality. And the reason we always end up with these absurdities is because morality can't be accounted for empirically without obscuring it behind some poorly assessed substitute, which is by definition.
It's not a poorly assessed substitute. It is a definition. Like all definitions are circular up to a certain point. Eventually you just circle back around. That's how definitions work. Eventually it becomes a loop.
Circular reasoning, and which always offers a substitute that falls
somewhere along the
short
line. You loop
of whatever it is that we mean by morality. So an atheist can't actually say that anything by that measure is right or wrong and truly mean what they're saying without sacrificing their own logical consistency.
So is he trying to say that like what makes it right or wrong is whether or not you'll go to heaven or hell for it? Like what God allows? Is that all he's saying? Because you could say that in such a shorter way, dude. You could just say that you believe there's a man in the sky that dictates what you're allowed and not allowed to do. And if you do things that you're not allowed to do, you go to hell. That's what you could say. And that's how you operate. And that is level 1 Kohlberg stage of moral reasoning, just so you know. Like if you guys don't know what the Kohlberg stages are, level 1 and 2, it's either separated into 3 levels or 6 levels, depending on which one you look at. For all intents and purposes, let's just say 3 levels. So level 1 is basically just, I do things that are right or wrong because I will incur consequences for doing bad things, and I will incur rewards for doing good things. That's Kohlberg stage level 1. Level 2 is, I do things because it is legally required of me. Like this is just like, you know, the thing that most people do. This is like, it's a basically moral code by like social standards. Like you follow the social ethical code, right? Because that's what other people are doing. You have kind of a sense of guilt for not doing certain things, even nobody sees you not doing it, things like that. The third stage is, and not everybody reaches this stage, you've actually sat down and grounded your axioms and figured out what is right and what is wrong and why, okay? My axiom is slavery is bad. Slavery is wrong. We shouldn't have slavery. Why? Because, first of all, I don't want to be a slave. I want to have the freedom to do what I want. And I'm a conscious human, okay? And I know that I am surrounded by other conscious humans who all want that same freedom that I have. And so since I want it, I want them to have it. Because the minute that I say it's okay to enslave them as conscious human beings, I'm saying it's okay to enslave me as a conscious human being. And I don't want that, okay? Otherwise, I would have an inconsistent moral framework for them versus me. I would be putting myself on a higher pedestal than them. And I don't think of myself higher than them. So I don't want anybody to be enslaved at all. And that's how I ground my axiom on slavery. And I think that's fine. I don't need God to tell me that I'll go to hell if I enslave people. I just don't need that. If language has a finite number of words, and for every definition you ask, well, how is that defined? Then by the pigeonhole principle, you will eventually run out of new words to ask, so all definitions are circular. Exactly, thank you. I argue that religious definitions can be the most circular. Well, yeah, because how do you know God's real? The Bible says it. How do you know the Bible's right? Because God wrote it or something. God ordained it. Well, how do you know God is real? Because it says in the Bible. Yeah. You said it was an axiom? Okay, yes. You're not supposed to explain axioms, but yes, slavery is wrong.
See, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that an atheist can't be moral or that they don't have a moral conscience. What I am saying is that they can't account for that morality logically.
Point is, I shouldn't have to explain to you why slavery is wrong, but, you know.
For them, it's something like social conditioning or just feelings about something. But whatever it is, it's not rational. Now, at this point, it might be fair to demand of me the thing that I've been asking atheists for, which is, what's my definition of morality?
Perfect.
So morality is a standard of truth that gives us the ability to apprehend potential alternative thoughts, actions, and scenarios, and to make judgments about them that express either approval or disapproval when compared to that standard.
That is a drawn-out definition. Let me listen to that one more time. Morality is a standard
of truth that gives us the ability to apprehend potential alternative thoughts, actions, and scenarios, and to make judgments about them that express either approval or disapproval when compared to that standard.
Sorry, my brain is not firing on all cylinders right now. Word salad. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who's like confused a little bit by this. I just got news that my nephew is being born as we speak. My sister, at last, is making me an uncle. Isn't that great, everybody? Gonna be an uncle, baby. I think this time tomorrow, little Teddy's coming out. It's a bigger deal to me than being a dad. I'm just kidding, but no, No, I'm excited. I'm going to ruin that kid. It's going to be great. I'm going to ruin that kid. Uncle Gunter, baby. Funkle. What's Funkle? Fun uncle? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Brain's not firing on all cylinders, as I said. Gonna crochet him some stuff, you know. Ask for a toy. I'll crochet him a toy. I'm sure he'll like that, right? Boys like that. Boys like that. I can, well, maybe a Pokemon doll. That'd be cool. It'd be great. I'm excited. I'm excited. All right, let's keep going.
Such judgments appear in statements like,
sorry for the pause,
that ought to happen and that ought not to happen, or more precisely, that ought to be and that ought not to be. In other words, we are making judgments of an ontological and...
This guy was like doing word salad, right? That ought to happen. What?
That ought not to be. In other words, we are making judgments of an ontological and metaphysical nature, which are inquiries about being and existence. These aren't...
How about you just like don't hurt people because you yourself don't want to be hurt, and you recognize that other people have the same level of existence that you do, you know, because we're all conscious human beings, you know. That seems simple enough to me. It doesn't have to get more complicated than that. This is how society has always functioned.
Questions about what does happen, they're questions about what ought to happen, because what ought to happen doesn't always happen. For example, slavery happens and is happening right now.
Which is interesting given that your God apparently is all powerful. Why didn't he prevent slavery? You know, if it's objectively bad that slavery happened, God had to have allowed that under your worldview. So if God allowed that, if that's part of his big plan, does that mean that slavery for that brief period of time was a moral act? And if it was not, then why did your God allow it? You know, either your God is not all loving, not all knowing, or not all powerful. It was his day off. That's fair. Like, I'm sorry. I know I said that I was going to back off the theists a little bit, but when you approach me, right, which he did by saying a question atheists can't answer. So this is him approaching atheists and saying, here's a question for you that you cannot answer. This question was, slavery is wrong. What is slavery wrong? And I said, yes, it's wrong. I answered it. Okay. You're challenging my worldview. Okay. So now I'm going to challenge yours. This is nothing against it. If you're just a Christian, you know, you're fine. I've had some people in my audience say like, hey, Alec, you know, you're drinking a little bit too much of the anti-theist sauce. Okay. I get it. I'm going to back off. But when this shit happens, I just can't help myself sometimes. Like it's stupid. You're making a dumb argument. It's a dumb argument.
In the world around us. And if we say that's wrong, we're saying it ought not to happen. But if we only take our moral understanding from that which can be observed and measured empirically, then there is no question of what ought to be, only what is, because only what is what can be measured and inquired about in this way. Which is why the physical sciences can't tell us that slavery is wrong. They can only tell us that it is, it exists, it has being. But if you're saying it
can tell us slavery is wrong because we can measure like the physical and psychological well-being of a slave, which I guarantee you is not going to have good results. That's how we measure whether or not slavery is wrong. If we take a slave, right? If we take a slave, like let's say that we did a survey on slaves back in the day, right? They all reported like really great psychological health and really good physical well-being. And they reported, I love being a slave. You know, this is great for me. This is how I'm happy. You know, I love this. This is a consensual agreement. The only caveat I would say is if they can leave it at any time, then it's not true slavery, right? But let's say for all intents and purposes, that's the results that we were getting. Then we could like prove, you know, or support at least that slavery has good qualities to it, you know? That would be contrary to what we know about slavery, but that's how that would work. You know what I mean? But since the contrary exists, where we have like really bad mental health outcomes and physical health outcomes. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? I'm sorry. I feel like that was a really weird way of saying that we're able to measure whether or not slavery is good based on those things. That's all I'm trying to say.
Ought not to exist, then you're appealing to some invisible standard that can't be measured empirically, that is used to judge potentials like slavery or not slavery, and saying that one should be willed and that the other should be opposed. One of those potentials, that is not slavery, should be instantiated by our will, and the other should be left on the shelf of mere potentials. And to make such statements, you have to offer evidence of a metaphysical and a theological nature, because there is no physical evidence available to you. Which is why
this is nerd shit, man. Like, no, you don't. Slavery's wrong. Done. Period. End of story. Slavery is wrong. I answered the question. Yes, slavery is wrong. Yes, that's the answer.
Wonder that slavery, which virtually disappeared in Christendom in the Middle Ages, started to resurge in Western civilization at exactly the time when secularism started to gain momentum and influence. That is
What?
the modern era. The slave trade that we tend
Okay, if that's even true, it's purely a coincidence. You cannot argue that secularism is what caused slavery, because people were using Christianity and Bible passages to justify slavery back in the day, okay? So even if what you're saying is true, that is a pure coincidence, which is not true. I'm pretty sure that's not true at all. I think you're just bullshitting. Yeah, rewriting history. Yeah, it's secularism that caused us to do slavery. Totally, man. Totally.
tend to think of and universally condemn really only got going during the scientific, secular, and Enlightenment era. In the ancient world, slavery abounded everywhere. The Roman Empire was built on the backs of slaves. And then in the Middle Ages,
yeah, and it was shitty back then.
It went into severe decline. And in certain places where Christianity was dominant and the church was most
Hold on, that sounds like a bold claim to me. I'm pretty sure in the Middle Ages, slavery was doing, the slave industry was doing just fine.
Influential. It virtually disappeared.
And also, very bold of you to say that the Middle Ages was at all good. That's when the Black Plague happened, man. All right, Europe lost 1/3 of its population, 1/3 of its population from the Black Plague because they didn't know how to take showers, okay? And they were all religious. I'm just saying, like the vast majority of them were religious.
But then for some reason, around the time of humanism, and then the Renaissance, and then the Enlightenment, it came back. It was exactly at this time when we
went to no, slavery never went anywhere. Slavery never went anywhere. It still exists today, and in fact, in greater numbers, okay? There are more people, I don't know about per capita, but I'm pretty sure this is a fact. There are more people enslaved today than there were during the slave days in America, when it was like, you know, chattel slavery, what we think of as slavery when we say that word. Okay? Slavery never went anywhere. It still exists even today. You just don't see it.
Stopped measuring the human soul as an essential ingredient in a person's humanity and reduced that inquiry about what a human being is
measuring
to only what can be
soul.
Physically measured, only what the sciences can tell us. And when they did that, they found that human beings are far from being equal. Some are bigger, some are stronger, some are smarter, some are more beautiful.
Okay, we know all that, but when we say that all humans are created equally, what we mean is that we have, or at least we ought to have, an equal amount of freedom, right? An equal amount of liberty to do what we want. Like, this is a weird, like, I'm being as charitable as I possibly can, but you did just say that humans are not created equal, which is kind of weird, man. It's a weird thing to say.
Some are more agreeable and more capable than others. Combine this with theories about natural selection and survival of the fittest, and you have the perfect recipe to say some people should dominate others and some people should be utterly subservient to others. It is only when we account for the human soul, a thing more precious than the entire known universe, that we can then say that all men are equal, for they all...
Okay, here's another thing though. If you're a slave owner, you're not a happy person, generally speaking. Like, slave owners were generally not very happy people. They're like, I can't speak for them, obviously. They're all pieces of shit. I don't care about their happiness, but like they were constantly under the impression that if like a slave escaped or got into their house when they weren't supposed to, they were always worried about the things that their slaves would be doing, the things that their slaves are capable of, because they knew that they're slaves. They knew deep down, if they didn't admit it, that their slaves did not like being slaves, okay? And when you're treating other people poorly like that, then you're gonna have that stress because you're gonna be worried they're gonna retaliate. So even just on a basic level of, is this good for me? No, it sure as f isn't. Because if those slaves revolt, your ass is grass, okay? You're done. And they knew that. They knew that perfectly well. And they lived with that stress. Slavery does not benefit anybody at the end of the day. It really does not. And that's why it's, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's bad. It's not the main reason. The main reason is because it's taking people's freedom away, okay? But even on a basic level of, does this benefit anybody? No, it doesn't. It really does not.
All carry the dignity of the divine image.
So we can even societally say reasonably
and this is why
it
is an injustice to place a thing greater than the whole universe in service of cultivating the small contingent goods of that universe for another person.
What?
Hey, thanks for watching.
I didn't understand that last part, but yeah, that was really stupid. To answer the question, yes, slavery is bad. Slavery is bad. There you go, I answered the question. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more, hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. If you enjoy my content, you enjoy what I do, I really appreciate any financial help that I can get. Go to youtube.com/AlecGunterTTV/join. You got some awesome benefits, such as seeing early videos, awesome emotes that you can use in the comments of YouTube videos, and a sweet badge next to your name. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'd really appreciate if you join. It is cheaper than the cost of a blowjob from your mom. So with all that being said, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.